We're back on the Michael Koren Show. Mark Steyn, the author of America Alone, The End of the World as We Know It. Multiculturalism is, and you brought that up in reference to Quebec, because it is a part and parcel of what Canada is, and what you say is part and parcel of what is wrong with Canada to a great extent. Can you articulate to people who haven't heard you talk about it before why multiculturalism in your I don't know whether you've used the word fraud, but I don't think it's far from what you think.
No, I think it is. I mean, I'm basically not in any doubt that most people, given the choice, want to live in an advanced Western society. That's why the immigration movements are from Yemen to Europe. There's not a lot of Scandinavians who want to live in Yemen. Even leftists who profess to believe in multiculturalism use the term the developing world. In other words, their assumption, even when they talk about these countries, is that they're developing towards something closer to Europe or North America. So I think the idea that all these cultures are equal and equally valid isn't true. There's one particular relatively narrow form of civilizational inheritance that delivers greater prosperity, greater opportunity, better health, better opportunities for you to live your full human potential than any other society. So to essentially pretend that there's no difference is
Who gets to be the arbiter over which are more equal than others, though?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? I think multiculturalism arises from the who are we to say that the common law inheritance of Canada is better than the tribal law of this particular patch of jungle in the middle of nowhere. We feel bad about saying that. So instead we pretend that everything is all the same and everything is equal. But it's not equal. The fact is that common law is a better form of justice than Islamic law as practiced in Saudi Arabia. And there shouldn't be anything wrong with saying that.
But if somebody comes back at you after saying that and says, that is an opinion, back that up with fact, how do you argue that?
Well, actually, oddly enough, when you do back it up with facts, when you point out, for example, that if you're a woman and you're raped in many Islamic countries, you get punished. You get punished. You are the one who has brought dishonor on your family. The victim gets punished. So you bring up facts like that, you bring up the lack of women's rights in Islamic countries or whatever, and then people say, well, that's just your opinion. No, there are objective measurements by which you can look at freedom in society. You look at whether you've got property rights, whether you've got a justice system that works, whether you've got a political culture that isn't tribal. And those are objective measurements on which you can measure the health of society.
If you're saying then that multiculturalism fails, the parts of the world which we have problems with right now, whether it be Saudi Arabia, whether it be Syria, nothing multicultural about them. The only countries that are truly think of themselves as multicultural are Canada, the United States, the Western nations. Is that not the reason why people want to come here?
No, I think that's you're right. Multiculturalism is a unicultural phenomenon. You can't go and go to Saudi Arabia and be multicultural. You've got to do it in North America, Europe, Australia.
It's what sets us apart, right?
Yes, but it's not why people move here. I don't believe when you take, say, the great George Jonas, who was my fellow columnist at the National Post, Canada's greatest public intellectual in many ways. George Jonas came here from communist Hungary. He didn't come here. He didn't move to Canada because he wanted Canada to be more like communist Hungary. That was the reason he left communist Hungary. He came to Canada because it was one of the few countries on the planet that can boast almost half a millennium of sustained, relatively peaceful constitutional evolution, and before that a legal and political inheritance going back to Magna Carta 800 years ago. He knew what he was moving to, and he didn't move to Canada to make it more like communist Hungary.
But I know a lot of people who came for the other reason, because they knew they would be accepted here, because they knew that their culture wouldn't be frowned upon. And I grant you, if we were to take our culture to another part of the world, it wouldn't be accepted, and we know that. But it is accepted here, and so
yes, but I think it's a question of what are you accepting? I mean, when we just to take the Hungarian example, none of us mind if you live in a boring small town and you're sick of having ham and rye at the diner every night, year in, year out, for decades, and a Hungarian restaurant opens up across the street and you can have goulash. That is great. That is terrific. That is the best kind of multiculturalism. I'm in favor of cross-cultural commingling. Some of my favorite words, for example, just as a writer, it is amazing how many words I really like come from India. Pajamas, veranda, jodhpurs. It's amazing how in that relationship that goes back hundreds of years between England and India, India had an impact on the English language and culture in all kinds of interesting ways. But I don't think I think when one actually fetishizes multiculturalism and cultural relativism, you lose the ability to understand where to draw the line, because that's dangerous.
This is where I think you've been misunderstood to a lot of people, because I think a lot of people think you say that multiculturalism does not work, so we shouldn't have it. But you're talking about cultural commingling, you call it.
Yes, and I'm happy with that. I mean, I think multiculturalism is a cult of, by and large, a cult of ignorance. I'm astonished, you know, that if you label yourself a multiculturalist, it absolves you knowing anything about any other cultures. Try it. Ask a multiculturalist what the capital of Nepal is, or ask him about the principal exports of Malaysia or whatever. You won't. It absolves you from having to know anything about other cultures, and because of that, it actually, if everything is all the same, if everything is just as good and as bad as each other, who are we to say when we hear, for example, that Muslim polygamists in Ontario are claiming separate welfare checks for each of their wives? We sort of can't figure out, why is that wrong? Why is that wrong?
We'll come back in just a moment.